Hey guys, welcome back to Rudder Renovations, where today we're going to learn how to install a kitchen backsplash. Here we go. Before we get started with our project, let's talk about some of the things we're going to need. Most people start by picking their tile, and the tile will tell you what the recommended overlap will be, whether it's 50% or 33% when you're setting your tiles. The tiles will also tell you what the recommended grout gap will be in between the tiles, which helps you pick out your spacers. Next, you're going to pick out whatever adhesive you're going to use, and the adhesive will tell you, one, what kind of surface prep, if any, is needed for your walls or whatever you're applying the adhesive to. In addition to, it'll tell you what size trowel you need in order to apply your particular size tile to the wall. Once you're finished with the application of the tile, you'll have to grout in between the tiles, and you're going to have your grout float, you're going to have your sponges to remove excess grout, and you're going to have your buckets, several buckets of water to rinse your sponge as you remove grout from the tile. So let's get started. As you begin, you can remove switch and outlet plates, as well as the screws that hold the switch and outlets to the box themselves. That way you can slip the tile behind them. You also want to cover your countertops before you get started. I found that trash bags work great because they tend to stick to granite, and you can throw them away whenever you're done. When you're putting down your first tile, you can choose to put it directly on the countertop, where you will eventually caulk the line where they meet, or you can put a spacer like I did and then put grout in that line. When you start the next row, you'll make your first cut, which will start the recommended overlap of your particular tile. I used a wet tile saw, but depending on the complexity of your cuts, like the ones I made around the windowsill, will help you decide what type of tile cutter you actually need. One easy way to get in behind your faucet or soap dispenser is by just going ahead and taking your trowel and putting the adhesive on the back of the tile first, and then you can lay it up against the wall. If you put up a tile that's not flush with the face of the tile next to it, it's okay to add a little extra adhesive behind it so that they're flush. Also, if you covered up your sink, make sure and have a bucket of water around. That way, if you have any spills or adhesive gets somewhere, you can easily clean it up. Whenever you're installing a backsplash, you're going to find that there are some awkward and hard to get to places with the adhesive. For instance, underneath the cabinets themselves, underneath the windowsill, behind the faucet, or even underneath an outlet like this. Just get the adhesive on the wall and then use the trowel to remove the excess adhesive and spread it in the direction that you're wanting to go. If it's still difficult, then you can always put the adhesive on the back of the tile like we did behind the faucet. Sometimes, if you've been working on little small pieces like this over here, probably work like, I don't know, 15 minutes on that thing. This starts to set up, and so you can either scrape it off, or you can just add additional stuff on the wall, or you can just add stuff on the tile. When placing each tile, put it against the edge of each tile beside it and underneath it, and pull up and away like I'm doing here, which will help keep your grout lines clear of adhesive and make it easier to prepare for grouting later. To maximize your time while you have adhesive on the wall, instead of making this cut by the window now, you can mark the top of the tile where your overlap is, continue to lay tiles, and then come back and make all your cuts at one time. Alright, once you come to tiling around an outlet, you need to test fit the tiles to see if they're going to obstruct the screw holding the outlet or switch into the box itself. And in this case it doesn't, thankfully. But if it does, you could use your tile saw or a grinder to remove the portion of tile that's blocking the screw from entering into the box. Also, if you added adhesive to the back of these tiles anywhere else, you want to make sure to apply it to the other tiles that you're going to be putting around the outlet as well, because you might not notice it in other areas, but as you put it around an outlet, if there's one tile that's not as recessed or as far away from the wall as the other, you're going to notice whenever you have that switch plate on. For those hard to reach places, here's a good example of just getting it all on the wall and then just using the trowel to spread it where you want it to go and removing the excess. Alright, when you're putting your tile up around an outlet and you do have to cut it, you want to leave enough of an overlap so that the outlet itself is going to be resting over the new tile, because if you don't, it's going to countersink and go further, and you'll either have to get little spacers that bring your outlet out, or you can do it this way and just remove the spot where the screw's going to go. That way it'll catch behind the tile. When you're finished putting up your tile, if there's adhesive that's been pushed out into the grout lines, you want to remove that before grouting. You can use a dull flathead screwdriver. I've heard of some people putting in a brush on their multi-tool and running it down the grout line. Either way, just be careful not to chip your tile, and then you'll be ready to grout. For my project, I use grout with a sealer already in the mix. That way I wouldn't have to come back and seal all of my grout lines. And for this project, I used 1.5 10-pound bags of grout. And before I started adding water to the mix, I went ahead and mixed all of the grout powder mix together. And then that way, if I needed to use that grout later, let's say a tile fell off or I needed to add some somewhere else, I could ensure that the color is going to match wherever I put new grout. Whenever you're mixing your grout, you want to add the water to the bucket first and then pour the grout into the water. And if you're using a half of a bag like I was, you can use a scale to measure the weight of the bag, or if you want to just check the consistency, you want it to look like pancake batter. Make sure to mix your grout on low speed so you don't separate any of the colors. Alright, once you're done, it'll look something like this, and then you'll be ready to go put it on the wall. Alright, your grout float has a couple different corners on it. One's a rounded edge, which helps you feather in grout, and then you have a squared corner, which helps you remove excess grout from your corners. If you're like me and you like a clean and tidy workspace, know that while you're grouting, that's not really a possibility. Grouting is very similar to applying the adhesive. The biggest goal is just to get it on the wall and then spread it where you want it to go. Remember that you can either caulk or grout the bottom line where your tile meets up with your countertop. Keep in mind, if your house is up north and you experience drastic changes in temperature, which causes contraction and expansion in materials, your bottom line should be at least 1/8 inch if you're going to grout it. When applying your grout, it would be ideal to come at the grout line at a 45-degree angle from each direction to ensure the maximum amount of grout being packed into the line. However, it's not always a possibility, so just do your best at getting the grout in each grout line and then pack it in as much as you can. Whenever you're grouting tile with an exposed edge, like tile behind the refrigerator such as this, you can use your grout float, or you can even use your fingers to help make a smooth line on the edge where it meets up with the wall. Throughout the grouting process, be sure to get plenty of grout everywhere, so keep a bucket of water nearby to help you clean up your hands, as well as any surfaces that grout gets on while you're working. Getting grout in those hard to reach places, such as where the countertop meets up with the tile or where the tile meets up with the cabinet, can be difficult. One tip that'll help is to get grout on the edge of the float only, and then use your edges to push it and pack it into the grout line. Alright, now that we have it filled in, we're going to start removing the excess grout. You'll take your sponge and wring it out really well, and you can start wiping down the tile. And what this is going to do is it's going to start smoothing out all of your grout lines and fill in any voids that you potentially missed. I'm using 3 buckets of water and a couple of sponges, and the reason why we have 3 buckets is because after making your second, third, or fourth pass, you're going to be leaving streaks on the tile, and you'll need clean water in order to make the tile clean. As you're wiping down your tile, be careful not to apply too much pressure in one particular area, because if you apply a lot of pressure on one grout line, it can remove too much, leaving an indentation which won't look right whenever you're finished. As you're finished wiping down the tile, if you see any gaps, there should be excess pieces of grout that have fallen off as you've been wiping down the tile. They might be a little hard, but if you apply a little bit of water, they should soften up, and you can use those to fill up any voids. Keep in mind, if you haven't turned off your electricity and you bump the outlet or switch with your sponge, you are going to get electrocuted, so be careful as you're wiping away excess grout around an outlet or switch. If you have a wall that's extremely long when you're doing a backsplash, it might be helpful to either do it in sections or have somebody else who's helping you to remove and spread the grout in, because by the time you get to one end, you'll find that the grout starts drying, and if you don't get to it in time, it can be hard to remove with a sponge. A backsplash is one of those things that people don't really think about, but it can significantly increase the appeal of your kitchen. It can increase the value of your home, and the beautiful thing is that you can do it at a very low cost if you do it yourself. Alright guys, I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you like it, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace and God bless.